Far below the surface of the sea, where sunlight softened into green and blue, and the water held its own cathedral-like silence, there stood the kingdom of the Sea King. Coral halls rose like carved stone, sea flowers swayed in hidden gardens, and the currents moved through everything with a dreamlike grace. There lived the Little Mermaid, the youngest of the king's daughters, quiet, thoughtful, and unlike the others in the depth of her longing. While her sisters delighted in tales of shipwrecks, treasures, and storms, she listened most carefully whenever the world above the sea was spoken of. Her grandmother told her that beyond the sea lay another world, where human beings walked upon the earth, lit fires against the night, and lived lives brief but full of mystery. These stories stirred the Little Mermaid more deeply than she could explain. Yet she was too young to rise to the surface herself. Each mermaid princess had to wait until her 15th year before she could first visit the upper world. And so the youngest listened, imagined, and waited. In the stillness of the deep, her longing grew not louder but more faithful, as certain desires do when they are denied for too long. At last the night came when she was allowed to rise. She swam upward through dark water silvered by moonlight until her head broke the surface, and the human world opened before her. The sky seemed vast beyond measure. The stars burned with a strange stillness, and near her floated a great ship, lit with lanterns and music. On its deck, people moved in celebration, and among them stood a young prince, handsome, grave, and alive in a way that struck her heart with sudden force. It was his birthday, though she did not yet know it. She knew only that she could not look away. But joy on the sea is often fragile. Before long, the sky darkened, the wind rose, and the celebration gave way to terror. Waves struck the ship, masts groaned, lightning tore the heavens apart. The Little Mermaid watched the prince as the vessel broke under the storm's violence, and men were thrown into the black water. Without hesitation, she swam to him. His strength was fading, his eyes had closed, and there, amid wreckage and foaming darkness, she held his head above the waves and carried him through the long, perilous night toward the shore. By dawn, she had brought him safely to land. Bells sounded from a nearby convent, and the first rose-colored light touched the shore. The Little Mermaid placed the prince gently upon the sand and hid herself behind the rocks, watching with all the tenderness of a heart that had already given itself away. Soon a young woman from the convent found him, and people came to carry him to safety. The prince opened his eyes and smiled at the woman before him, never knowing who had saved his life. The Little Mermaid felt both joy and sorrow in the same breath. Back in the Sea Kingdom, she could no longer rest. It was not only the prince she desired now, but the world to which he belonged. She learned from her grandmother that humans, though their lives are brief, possess immortal souls that rise beyond death. Mermaids, by contrast, live long and beautiful lives beneath the sea, only to dissolve at last into foam. This knowledge pierced the Little Mermaid more deeply than fear. She longed not merely for love, but for a soul, for a place in the mystery that seemed to burn within the human world above. At last she sought the Sea Witch, who lived in a part of the ocean feared even by the bravest creatures of the deep. The path there wound through dark waters, grasping plants, and strange pale things that moved without sound. The witch understood her desire before it was spoken. Yes, she could give the mermaid human legs. Yes, the prince might come to love her, but every wish has its price. The potion would cause terrible pain. Her voice, the sweetest thing she possessed, must be surrendered. And if the prince married another, her heart would break, and she would vanish into sea foam. The Little Mermaid did not turn back. Love and longing had already carried her too far. She gave the witch her voice, and with it the songs of her childhood, the language of her sorrow, and the one power by which she might have moved the prince's heart. Carrying the potion, she rose through the night to the shore near his palace. There, at dawn, she drank. Pain rushed through her as if a sword had passed through her body. She fell senseless. When she awoke, she had human legs, beautiful and graceful, but every step she took would feel as though she were walking upon knives. The prince found her on the shore, silent, radiant, and strange. He brought her into the palace with curiosity and kindness, delighted by her beauty and by the gentle sadness in her eyes. She could dance with a grace no one had ever seen, though each movement cost her pain. She remained near him always, loving him more deeply than she had ever loved the sea itself. And yet, because she had no voice, she could not tell him who she was, or how his life had once rested in her arms between storm and dawn. The prince loved the silent girl dearly, but not as she hoped. He said she was as precious to him as a beloved child, as gentle and faithful as a spirit sent to comfort him. But the one he believed had saved him from the sea was the young woman from the convent, the first face he had seen when he awoke on shore. In his mind, gratitude and longing had already shaped a false memory. The Little Mermaid, unable to speak, could not correct it, and so she listened while the man she loved gave his heart to an illusion she herself had made possible. In time, the prince was told that he would marry a neighboring princess, and when he met her, he believed she was the very one who had saved him. Joy lit his face with the certainty the Little Mermaid had long feared. Preparations were made at once. The wedding would take place, and afterward the ship would carry them over the sea beneath festive banners and music. The Little Mermaid remained beside him through it all, smiling when he looked at her, while within her the knowledge of her fate darkened hour by hour like evening falling across water. On the night after the wedding, when all was quiet but for the breathing of the sea and the dim creak of the ship, the Little Mermaid's sisters rose from the water beside her. Their long hair was gone. They had given it to the sea witch in exchange for one last chance to save her. They placed a knife in her hand and told her that if she struck the prince before dawn and let his blood fall upon her feet, she would become a mermaid again and return with them to the sea. The Little Mermaid took the knife and stood trembling in the moonlight. She entered the cabin and looked upon the prince as he slept beside his bride. One movement, one terrible act, and her life would be restored. The sea would take her back. Her sisters would not lose her. Yet love, in its purest and saddest form, does not destroy the beloved for the sake of survival. The Little Mermaid bent down and kissed the prince's brow one final time. Then she threw the knife into the sea. The blade flashed briefly, vanished beneath the waves, and with it vanished her last claim upon the earthly life she had chosen. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, the Little Mermaid stepped to the ship's edge and cast herself into the sea. She expected pain. She expected dissolution. She expected to become foam upon the water, as all mermaids must at the end. But death did not take her in the way she had feared. Instead, she felt herself lifted into brightness, weightless as the morning air. Around her moved beings of light, the daughters of the air, who told her that because she had chosen mercy over selfishness, she had been granted another path toward an immortal soul. No longer of the sea, not yet of heaven, she had become a daughter of the air. Through kindness, patience, and unseen good deeds, she might still one day gain the eternal life for which she had yearned. It was not the ending she had imagined when she first rose to the surface and saw the prince beneath the lanterns. It was not a human wedding, nor a triumph of earthly love. Yet it was not nothing. It was a strange and sorrowful grace, the kind Andersen so often offers, an ending that wounds the heart while opening it towards something larger. That is why The Little Mermaid has endured for generations. It is not merely a tale of longing, nor only a story of sacrifice. It is a meditation on love, pain, silence, and the cost of desiring another world. The Little Mermaid does not win in the ordinary sense. She loses voice, home, and the human love she sought. Yet through that loss, she becomes more than she was. Andersen does not comfort us cheaply. He gives us instead a beauty touched by grief and a hope so fragile that it feels almost holy above the breaking waves.